I think we all put our heart and soul. All these guys up at the Western Design Conference put their heart and soul into every piece. And if it's not received well, there's a real psychological damage that happens. And so being able to understand that maybe somebody not liking what you do is not necessarily a bad thing.
Think of the people you interact with every day. Would you want to spend a day in a canoe with them? Hi, I'm Nathan Mercero, CEO of Planning Alternatives. We're a disruptive brand in the financial planning space with a point of view that true wealth has nothing to do with money. Growing up in a small town in Canada, I experienced examples of families with money and without. It started me on this journey of understanding wealth and the idea that spending a day in a canoe with someone could be one of the best investments you could make. Join me as I sit down with leaders, entrepreneurs, creatives, rule breakers, and friends to discover their perspective of true wealth. And maybe you'll start to shift yours.
I'm delighted today to spend time with Doug Nordberg of Nordberg Furniture. Doug, you're based in Cody, Wyoming, and we're here at the Western Design Conference, and you have gotten great reviews of your work and would love to hear your story. And welcome today to the Few Podcast. And if you don't mind telling listeners a little bit about yourself and what's your once upon a time and how it all started.
For me, building furniture started when I was 12. My parents were in the import-export business of elk antlers. So there was a strike in LA on the docks, and we suddenly had this excess amount of material. And instead of panicking, I started building stuff, and it kind of went from there. So that was where my very earliest origins, I guess, on this started.
Now, listeners may not appreciate the full art around antlers. And at the conference, your work is on display, and it's incredibly impressive just to see all these antlers and the things that you're doing with them. Where do these antlers come from? And give, mind listeners a little background about the antler world.
Antlers, they shed once a year, and right around mid-March, they'll start they'll drop them, and then they start to grow back. So you'll see animals running around with like a velvet on their antlers. And what that is a sheath that actually creates blood flow to make these things grow quicker. I believe from what I've heard that antlers are one of the fastest growing substances out there. Each year they grow them and then drop them the next. So each year they get a little bit bigger. And right now the velvet's off and they're in the rut, and now they'll get ready to produce and then drop again in March. So it's a year-around cycle for them.
And going back to your story early in life, how did you cultivate this interest in antlers, or was it just happenstance about your parents' situation and their involvement?
Well, I was always fascinated. I'd see antlers laying on the floor, and, I'd look at something and it's like, wow, that would really make an interesting chair. It was real crude at the beginning. We didn't have a lot of tools, just hand drills and screwdrivers. And we started piecing together these candle holders at first and lamps, and then which kind of evolved into everything from couches now to stair railing to pretty much anything that you can do out of wood, we try to be able to create out of antler. And antler furniture, it's been around for a lot of one of the pieces I have at the show is actually, it's called a Black Forest piece. And around the 1860s, these guys in Austria were starting to build stuff for some of the hunting castles. And were doing really intricate carvings, but they were using antlers in those. Yeah, so, it's been around for a long time. I just jumped on the bandwagon 40 years ago, back in the early 80s. Yeah.
At Planning Alternatives, we encourage people to discover what true wealth means to them. We actually have a belief system that true wealth has nothing to do with money. It has many other categories that people can explore, creativity being one of them. And you're living a life exploring the creative aspects. How did you take that curiosity and then turn it into entrepreneurship? Because there's a lot of people that say, hey, I've been interested in a hobby or passion, but how do How did you cross the bridge to make it more of a business interest?
Well, fortunately for me, I have a lot of smart people in my family. So one of my relatives is a stockbroker. And when I was in my mid-teens and was really starting to pick up some steam in the gallery situations, they gave me the rule of like, hey, if you start when you're 15 and you save till you're 30, you shouldn't really have to save a lot after that. And so I followed that mindset, listened to them. So glad I did. It certainly put me into a position now where I can do what I want. I have a very low debt load. I don't have to, when the tough times come, which they do for all of us, it's actually something we can embrace as opposed to fear. Just because when I was much younger and I took the advice of certain family members and tried to capitalize on what I was making when I didn't have mortgages and kids and stuff. So that's really been a big part of what put me in the position I am.
So it's like you had some good financial planning, I probably said.
I was pretty lucky. Yeah.
And then you applied it. And that's a key benefit of taking a concept and moving it to action to reality that we're hoping and dreaming for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess if a guy's going to rely on Social Security for your retirement, I don't know. To me, that's a pretty risky thing. And once you start to discover the tax world in business and you have somebody who really knows how to navigate you through that, you know, having a business, boy, I tell you, you can really capitalize on that. And like I said, for me, I started a Keo when I was about 15 and used that because of the tax incentives to that. I was able to keep more of what I made.
Starting at an early age, leveraging your business, saving into the right areas. That's the recipe for success. And that's the sandbox that we play in to help many entrepreneurs and business owners build their path to wealth and true wealth in terms of focusing on what they're passionate about. How did you evolve the different business interests that you now have? You have a wide variety of areas that you're working.
Yeah, so I'm a gallery owner as well. So for the last 17 years, I've run I've not only got into the building part of it, but I've got into the selling part of it. And that's a real crucial part to this. You can build the best mousetrap in the world, but if you don't really know how to sell it, it becomes very difficult. But fortunately, there's galleries that are willing to do that for you. So I started that in 2008. I got in more into the world of repping as much as building and learned how to promote stuff. It's very difficult as an artist to just tell somebody straight up, I'm really good at what I do. They don't have any problem saying that about their friends and colleagues. But to really say that about yourself is a very uncomfortable thing.
Why is that?
I think we all put our heart and soul, all these guys up at the Western Design Conference put their heart and soul into every piece. And if it's not received well, there's a real psychological damage that happens. And so being able to understand that maybe somebody not liking what you do is not necessarily a bad thing. I've always emphasized that to everybody we've ever repped in our gallery, that the reaction that you want is not necessarily, God, I love it. There's also equal reaction to, like, I hate that piece. Anytime it sparks emotion like that, I think that's a real great thing. Where you don't want to fall into is where somebody says, the piece is, it's okay. It's all right. That's not really what we strive for as artists. We want to either go down in flames or skyrocket into the, but being able to tell somebody, it's like, hey, this is a great investment for you. We've put a lot of work into this, and it's very uncomfortable for an artist.
You're referring to this creative struggle of just trying to build something that's important to you, have it
Expressed in the world, but not always getting acceptance around how it's viewed by you. What advice do you give other artists, other entrepreneurs, other creators that are experiencing rejection?
You have to have a little bit of a thick skin. Having success in this and being able to make a living doing it, and it's not something that happens overnight. And, you got to take the praise that you get and keep it and just really shrug off the naysayers. I've had to do that many times in my life. And, it really wasn't until for the first 20 years, if somebody didn't like my piece, I almost took it personally. But now if somebody doesn't like my piece, they hate it really more than just not care for it is really more important to me than overall acceptance. But I've got several hundred designs at this point in time that are very well established. If I make a piece that doesn't go over well, I'll just build another one. That's always kind of has some popularity to it.
As you look back at your journey, what are some things that surprised you along the way? Various things that you learned, things that you observed?
If you work hard enough, you're going to be successful. It doesn't really matter what you do. Really, the biggest regret, I guess, that I have is that when times were slow, I didn't appreciate that for what it was, that it was an opportunity to be creative. As an older person now, I do see that and the advantages of that. If there was an advice that I would give somebody, it's like, hey, make sure you're always preparing for those slow times, because you're going to learn a lot more in those slow times than you will when you're swamped. When you're 20, 30, 40 pieces backed up, there's no room for creativity. You're just cranking stuff out at that point in time. When you're one piece backed up and you have a lot of free time, you can really start to try those, experiment with things that maybe you wouldn't have before. And it took me a long time to realize that those times are good. It's not the bad time you think it is. It's really an opportunity that doesn't come around very often. And
there's a difference between the flow of being in the creative zone and then having a sense of fulfillment, as whether it's the produce from the work that you've done as a creative or other aspects of life. Where are you in flow? And also, where do you find fulfillment?
That's really an interesting question. I spent a lot of time in mass production. That was not fulfilling. There was a lot of money. It was great, a lot of stability. From an artist standpoint, it was I don't really know. I started getting where I would hate to go to work, because I just knew exactly what I was going to be doing today, tomorrow, the next day. For me, being in flow is, like I said, just having enough work to be secure, or I'm not stressed financially, but also having the time to try different things that you want to try. And having the funds to be able to do that is really important. I have a bank account that I call my opportunity fund. If things slow down and we have a little bit of spare time, I can draw from that account to try different things that I've been wanting to try for years. One of the pieces I have at the show is a direct result of that. A few years ago, we slowed down, and it's like, all right, finally, I get to do something for me. And that for me, to answer your question, flow is, like I said, it's when I'm not overwhelmed, I'm much more productive. When I'm overwhelmed with work, I seem to get into that mindset of where I'm in quicksand, where I can't really get anything done. And trying to find that balance has been challenging over the years for me, but I think I've got it figured out now.
As you think about the future, what are you looking forward to?
I am actually retiring in 3 weeks. Not from the furniture, but I'm getting rid of the gallery. The balance with trying to be a good artist and a good gallery owner, it's hard to do both. And that, for me, I'm getting rid of that, and now I can just focus on producing things that I like. And I don't know how much longer I have in the business, but for whatever time I'm here, I'm going to make sure it counts from here going forward.
And looking back, what advice would you give a 20-year-old Doug? I want to know now.
Oh, geez. Understand the tax code. I hate to say,
financial passion.
Don't do anything for the money. It really,
What do you mean by that?
if what you're doing is strictly about money, go be an attorney. Don't be an artist, because, like I said, it takes a long time to get to where you're really making a lot of money doing it. You're going to make a lot more money on the tail end of your career than you are at the very beginning. Just be passionate about what you do. And like I said, enjoy the career for what it is more than for what it's going to financially do for you. I've been on spring break since I was 12. I don't really consider building this stuff to be work. I usually add 2 zeros to my income just simply because I really do like what I do. And that's for a young artist. And the ones that we've brought into the gallery and have promoted over the years, we've always said that. And never quit your day job until you're losing money by going to it. You can get into a situation where you have to stop doing your passion because it's not financially viable for you. Like I said, be smart and like I said, understand business. I just can't emphasize that enough. I mean, it's by Western hands, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that's one of the things that when we bring in an intern, it's not just about how to build stuff. It's about how to run a business and how to make sure that you're going to be doing this 5 years from now. So we don't just load them up. We make them go to college and actually learn accounting and learn how to build a website and how to be self-sufficient until you can afford to hire things out to people.
I love that because you can have aspiration and feed that curiosity, but then we all need a chassis of support, of structure, of knowledge, of how to apply that in the real world, how to have, you mentioned the financial insight, the habits, the decisions, the knowledge of tax code. Those are all pieces to the puzzle that help creativity actually flourish and be sustainable.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I said, I was fortunate to have very smart people around me. Had I not had that, I may not be doing this. And it's been great because I really don't know how to do anything else. I never went to college, or I just was able to make a go of this right away. Once I was old enough to be on my own, I was fairly established by that point in time. Yeah, now the money aspect to it, it's a very important thing, but it just can't be about the money.
Final question, Doug. What does true wealth mean to you at this stage of life?
Just knowing in 3 weeks from now, I get to do exactly what I want to do every day. There's no place I have to be anymore. I don't have any gigantic jobs that are hanging over my head that are keeping me from doing the things I wanted to do later on in life. That's more important to me than anything I've ever saved or any property that I've ever purchased or anything like that. It's just, like I said, knowing that I'm going to have, for the first time in 17 years, full freedom. And being young enough still that I can still go kayaking and do the things I like to do. Like I said, I was very lucky. I was around smart people. And really, to me, that's more important than any kind of money I'll ever make, is being able to do that.
Well, thank you for sharing your story today.
Absolutely.
Congratulations on this upcoming transition.
Yes.
Wish you all the best in the next chapter.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thanks for having me, and certainly enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review. To discover what wealth means to you, please take our assessment at planningalt.com.